Irena SCOTT. Thank you for allowing this first interview with this new channel, Globalities, which was created in June 2025. We are today on June 30th, 2026. It is the eighth interview on the channel. Recently, in May, I recorded two interviews, one with James Clarkson, former director MUFON for the state of Washington, another one with author and investigator Paul Blake Smith. Have you met any of these persons, Dr. Irena SCOTT, James Clarkson, for instance?
I met James Clarkson. I was on a panel with him at in a UFO festival in Oregon.
Okay, yes, Magminsville.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard about this festival because James Clarkson has talked to me about it years ago. Okay. How are you doing with the wave of heat across the continents of planet Earth, Dr. Irena SCOTT?
It just hit here today, so I haven't. I won't be out cutting brush today, I don't believe.
Okay, it's better. It's cooler a little. It's cooling a little in France too. It's still hot outside. Here it's 3 o'clock and it's quite kind of heavy outside. So that's why I close the curtains here. Irena, I have agreed to focus this first interview on the Pascagoula UFO incident, which occurred on October 11th, 1973, in the state of Mississippi, a case that has been largely covered recently thanks to a new investigation which got started around 2017. You have been involved yourself at a point, we'll detail, of course, in a while. Before getting into this big subject, I should introduce you to the French listener, French public, many of whom have never heard your name, so you are a famed researcher and author in the US and abroad. So a few extracts from the introduction chapter to your book, Sacred Corridors, which we have here in the presentation, together with your first book, UFOs Today, one of your previous book. Okay, so such quotation from your book, Sacred Corridors. I have had training in several scientific fields from top institutes. PhD was from University of Missouri College of Veterinary Medicine in physiology, specialization in radioisotope techniques, post-doctoral research at Cornell University, had a professorship at St. Bonaventure University, done research and teaching at the University of Nevada, worked in neurophysiology at the Ohio State University College of Medicine, was trained in photographic analysis, aircraft identification, have been employed by the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, in PhD level GS-11 research in satellite photography, some of the highest security clearances above top secret in the government. My UFO publications include books such as UFOs Today, 17 Years of Lies, Disinformation, and Government Cover-Up, articles in numerous UFO publications, including MUFON Journal, the Center for UFO Studies magazine, International UFO Reporter, IUR, Fate magazine, MUFON of Ohio newsletter, and The Black Vault. Served on the Mutual UFO Network MUFON Board of Directors, as a consultant in physiology and astronomy, as a field investigator for both MUFON and CUFOS. I've worked in some of the most critical organizations and facilities that conducted government UFO research. I've worked at Battelle Institute, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and have been stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Chief Government Agency for UFO investigation. Is that correct, Irena?
Yes, I've been sent to, I worked at Battelle, and for the DIA, I've been at Wright-Patterson and been escorted around by people and been in the secured area and things like that. I've been in the actual blue room.
Mm-hmm. You saw the blue room.
I didn't know what it was when I was there, though.
Oh.
It was identified later as a building, and I was in that building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard about the blue room through the account about Senator
Goldwater.
yes, who met the General LeMay, Curtis LeMay, this famous event. That's how I heard about that in Thomas Carey's book, Thomas Carey and Donald Schmidt book, Inside the Area 51, with a focus on Wright-Patterson as well. Okay, so I hope that we'll have opportunity to hear you talking about Wright-Patterson, Battelle Institute, and all these issues about retroengineering, alien technology, arguably. So thank you again, Dr. Irena Scott. Now we focus on the PASCAGOULA event. So here we have the covers of the first two books by Calvin Parker, who passed away 2 years ago. And so he authored these two books together helped, supported by Philip Mantle, and later he was supported by you. So the cover of the first books, I got translated the first one, Calvin PASCAGOULA, The Closest Encounter, and the second one has not been translated into French. Here we have the cover in English of the book you authored, together with Philip Mantle, Beyond a Reasonable Doubt, which is focused on some of the major new witnesses who stepped forward after the Calvin Parker's first book, and after it. So it's Beyond Reasonable Doubt, and that's one book when we meet, we discover this impressive witness, Mrs. Maria Blair, and her deceased husband, Vernon Blair or Jerry Blair, and their amazing account, which you will by Philip Mantle as well.
Yes.
Here, PASCAGOULA uncovered another book by Philip Mantle, and otherwise a book on the transcripts published recently in 2024, which gathers all the transcripts of hypnosis transcripts from 1973. Irena, Calvin pays tribute to you in his foreword chapter to his second book, PASCAGOULA, The Story Continues. He writes, Calvin Parker writes, finally, I want to dedicate this book to Dr. Irena Scott. I have never met Irena, but she has played a huge part in helping put this book together. Irena has been the main person to turn to when it came to interviewing the new witnesses. Her professionalism has shone through at all times, and I guarantee that this book would have been very different if it was left to me to interview people. And his acknowledgement, he writes, my publisher, Philip Mantle, must also take a great deal of credit, plus Dr. Irena Scott. Philip and Irena have been the main ones tracking down new witnesses and interviewing them. Their help and dedication is a real credit to them both. And again, this book would not have been possible without them. So, first question, Dr. Irena SCOTT, can you tell the French listeners how you got involved into the PASCAGOULA incident of 1973?
It happened a real long time ago. I first got involved right when it happened. I hope you don't mind a long story. I was in Missouri in the United States, and my mother was in Ohio, which was 3 states away. And one night she called me and said she and Dad heard an explosion. And I joked with her and said, well, I couldn't hear it 600 miles away. And she kept asking me, did you hear that? And I thought it was strange. And I started teasing her about she was crazy and things like that. And years later, I wondered about it. She'd also called several days later and said there was a huge flap of UFOs going on. She was a skeptic that there were just people all over seeing them, and people were hiding their basements and keeping their kids in like a war zone. And the governor saw that a UFO chased one of her friends in a car and things. And so years later, I didn't remember it too well, but I looked up to see if I could find it, and I found the date. And it turned out that explosion she had talked about had been heard all over a whole area of the United States, and nobody could explain it. And it happened the same time as the Pascagoula abduction, and I didn't pay attention to the Pascagoula abduction. I paid attention to the sound, and I wrote something up for Scientific Journal. And the state seismologist of Ohio was interested, and he helped me, and we published that. And that was the same time as the Pascagoula. And then I wrote several other things about the sound, and that's what got me into ufology. But then many years later, I had a manuscript accepted by Philip Mantle. It was the first book there, and he was becoming interested in Pascagoula, and he's in England, and they have an accent there, and Pascagoula's in Mississippi, and they have an accent and everything. And he wanted somebody to in the United States to interview people because it'd be a lot easier. So he asked me if I would. And I was very interested because I'd already written about something that happened the same time and had something happen to me the same time. And so I was very interested, and that's how I got into it.
Mm. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Thank you for recording again this sonor bang, because I read your article in one of the books, and you explain that we are in the 1970 UFO wave or UFO flap. That is, we call that it was one of the major UFO waves in the world, in the United States. 1973, and it was at the peak of the wave. The month of October was really one of the months at the peak of the wave. October and November, or August and September, or October. So, of course, I wanted to ask you about it precisely, because it's not being insisted sufficiently that the Pascagoula incident is part of the UFO wave of 1973, and yet it has to be understood in this amazing background, the environment, of course. Philip Mantle told me that he had to interview people. It was difficult to him because of the intonation in the South. And I've interviewed 2 times Calvin Parker, and it was really difficult. After 15 minutes to get Augustine, but at the beginning it's very, very tough for me, at least, the French. Okay, thank you, Irena. I'm going to give a description of the case by a first description of the case by Philip Mantle himself, so that you won't have to explain the basic circumstances. Here, a few pictures. Here is Schaupeter Shipyard. How do you spell it? How do you say it, Irena? Saltpeter? Peter?
I don't know either. I think it's saltpeter, but I'm not sure.
You see,
Sorry.
this picture, I know it for long, and I like this picture. It is so impressive, the Saltpeter shipyard. But I never knew precisely. I had no time to ask Philip Mantle where was the pier, the precise pier where the two fishermen were standing. Was it on the left part of this shipyard? Do you know that? No,
No,
you have not
I don't
studied
even.
that.
I can't tell from that picture. I'm not familiar with that picture.
It's a beautiful picture because it is an
Yeah.
original picture.
Sorry.
Sorry that Calvin Parker cannot tell us anymore. But there are surely people in America who know who would tell us sometime. Here is, this picture is a colorized picture. Of course, you know this original picture from 1973. It has been colorized by Dario Fernandez in Argentina. Usually, I don't like colorized pictures, because it's not genuine. It's not. But here it has been done very well. We feel that it is a true picture, but no, it has been colorized. The pier. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to read a few words by Philip Mantle, Irena. Pascagoula, October 11th, 1973. On the evening of October 11, 1973, 42-year-old Charles Hickson, 19-year-old Calvin Parker, co-workers at a shipyard, were fishing off a pier on the west bank of the Pascagoula River in Mississippi. They heard a rearing or whizzing sound, saw two flashing blue lights, reported that an oval-shaped craft, some 8 feet across and 8 or more feet high, suddenly appeared near them. The ship seemed to levitate about 2 feet above the ground. A door opened on the ship, they said, and 3 creatures emerged and seized the men, floating or levitating them into the craft. Both men reported being paralyzed and numb. Parker claimed that he had fainted due to fright. So, how did you know about? Who told you about the event precisely, Irena? Was it Philip Mantle, and how did you meet Calvin precisely?
Well, I just read what he wrote mainly.
Yeah. And did you know Charles Hickson himself?
No, when Philip contacted me about interviewing people, Hickson was dead, and Calvin was ill too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Here we have Charles Hickson on the left at the time of the event in the office of the shipyard with a young Calvin Parker, 19 years old, on the right. Here we have Charles Hickson passed away in 2011. Here we have this picture. I like it a lot. We have Charles Hickson on the site, on the pier. After the event, he came back a few weeks after. Very impressive picture, I find. Here again, on the same place, Charles Hickson. And here the creature. Okay, I will not. Do you want to say something about what they saw? Because I have the description, the basic description. I hear a few words. They describe the creature as being roughly humanoid in shape, standing about 5 feet tall. The creature's skin was pale in color, wrinkled. They had no eyes that the man could discern. They had slits for mouth. Their heads also appeared connected directly to their shoulders. No discernible neck. They were 3 carrot-like growths instead, one where the nose would be on a human, the other 2 where ears would normally be. the beings had lobster-like claws at the end of their arms. They seemed to have only one leg. Hickson later described the creature's lower bodies looking as if their legs were fused together. Hickson also reported that the creature moved in a mechanical, robotic way. Okay, then then we know what happened. They stayed they were put on the craft. They were examined with a strange device. They stayed maybe less than 1 hour. Then when they were on the bank, they get back to their car, they had drink, and they decided to go to the police department. They called the Keesler Air Force Base, and then they went to the police department. Okay, well, we'll not focus on all the story because it will be too long. They were interviewed and they were hypnotized. They had a hypnosis session with James Harder and Alan Hynek, who came to the place 2 days afterwards. On Saturday 13th in the morning, they were there. And then Calvin Parker ran away. He didn't want to have any contact with the press. He disappeared when Charles Hickson gave many interviews, and he published a book in 1983. I will show the cover in a moment. I want to ask you a question about something that happened years afterwards, and that was found recently when Philip Mantle and you started the new investigation. It is the event lived by Calvin Parker in 1993, that is 20 years after the original Pascagoula event, and audio tape was found of the hypnosis session that Calvin Parker had with Bud Hopkins. So can you say a word about that, Irena, this hypnotic session carried out by Bud Hopkins in 1993?
When that happened, Calvin was real young, and he didn't want to go through life being harassed about UFOs. And so he said he fainted and didn't remember anything. Well, then years later, he started talking about it a little more. And when he was hypnotized, and he didn't talk about it at all at first, but he said later that he'd seen a woman in the object when he'd been abducted, besides the entities or whatever they were. And then with the interview with Bud Hopkins, he talked about the woman and that she gave him visions and things like that of the end of the world and something like the end of the world and things like that.
But we understand that he had a new experience. Yeah, he didn't have only the experience, the close encounter of October 11th, 1973, but another event occurred in 1993. That's what we understand.
Yeah, he went up. I think he went fishing or something, and went out, and he was abducted again. And then he came back real late, and his wife wondered what happened to him and things. And at that time, he saw that woman again.
Yeah, so it means the being that he was in contact with, together with Charles Hickson, who did this experiment onto them, biological experiment. They came back to him 20 years afterwards because he recognized the woman. You remember it was a woman who who was closer to him about the craft.
Yes, he talked about, the two things, the creatures or whatever they are, entities, and then the other one looked like a woman, and he said it looked a lot like a human woman, but I don't
Yeah.
think he thought it was a human woman. And
Mhm.
then 20 years later, she came back, and he went another abduction, and um, she talked to him.
Yeah. She put messages in her head. Yeah. So that's amazing, Irena, to understand that not only an abduction occurs, but it is repeated years afterwards. Is it to you? Is it a usual pattern in abduction cases?
Yes, it is, I think, in a lot of abduction cases. Um, People are contacted again. Even researchers from atomic sites and things are, scientists are even sometimes contacted several times through abductions.
Yeah. Do you know that the tape was found thanks to Peter Robbins, whom Philip Mantle contacted, or either he contacted Philip Mantle? Do you remember the how it happened?
Well, Philip Mantle is just an excellent researcher, and he's like Sherlock Holmes or something. He just seems to, work and work and work and get everything. And he just found it and sent him to him. They hadn't realized that it existed up until then. I don't think I don't even remember.
Yeah,
Um,
because Peter Robbins was very close to Bud Hopkins. Some people say he was Bud Hopkins' secretary for years.
uh-huh. Yeah, he
Yeah,
worked with Bud Hopkins.
yeah, he was close to Bud Hopkins. Both of them lived in Manhattan, New York, South Manhattan, and Peter Robbins was involved in the art deal, and Bud Hopkins was a contemporary artist, so they may have known each other in the art business.
Yes,
So
unfortunately, Bud is dead, but Peter
yeah,
is
yeah.
very much alive and
So
healthy.
yeah. I talked to him recently, and he agreed for an interview. I told him that I will have an interview with you. He was very pleased, and so he informed Philip Mantle of this interview, of this hypnotic session, and that the archives, that Bud Hopkins archives, were in David Jacobs' hands. So both of them got into contact with David Jacobs, and David Jacobs sent the tape to directly by post mail to 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 Philip Mantle, and Philip Mantle had it digitized. So here we have on the left Peter Robbins when he was lecturing to MUFON some years ago. On the right, you have David Jacobs, and the yeah, but Hopkins, here is a tape sent by David Jacobs to Philip Mantle. Philip Mantle had it digitized, and then he did the transcript. So it is amazing. Thanks to the commitment to Charles um, Philip Mantle's commitment, we managed to find that.
Well, he just really searched and just, I mean, you wouldn't think you'd find anything from 1973, but he just found just a miracle of things.
Yeah, and David Jacobs' own UFO files, because he practiced himself many transcripts, and he had a lot of files of mails and books and articles. And Bud Hopkins archives have been donated by David Jacobs, because he was holding Bud Hopkins archives by Bud Hopkins' will. Were donated to the American Philosophical Society located in Philadelphia, because Jacobs lived in Philadelphia for most of his life before retiring close to Chicago. and where his elder son lives. So, so all these archives, Irena, are now in Philadelphia in the American Philosophical Society. What do you say about it? Such big archives, and almost nobody talks about it.
I think it's wonderful that people are saving things because we're on the borderline of where everything gets thrown out. And Phillips donated a lot to the center in um, New Mexico.
Yeah, David
And
Marler.
yeah, and I think that's great. I think people should know about that and donate everything they possibly can before it disappears.
Yeah, but what I mean is that this American Philosophical Society, we don't talk, nobody talks about it, and I think these archives, David Jacobs' archives, files, and Bedokins' files have not been examined, studied. See what I mean? I find some UFO researchers should go there and try to make an inventory of these files and give write an article to give accounts and access to more investigators in the world. Because I'm telling you, I know that because David Jacobs told me. Because, but I never I never read any article about that. Imagine Bud Hopkins, the father of abduction research, are in Philadelphia, and nobody talks about it. David Jacobs' files are there as well. So you
That's
will spread the spread the word, Irena, asking investigators to go there, right? To
that's
Philadelphia.
great.
Yeah, I know you're very busy in other things, but if you put a message on some groups, MUFON, whatever, I'm sure people will run. I think they should do that quickly. I would do that if I were in the States.
And Bud, was smart enough to tape record everything too, which is great.
Well, yeah, yes, but I think David Jacobs told me that himself did transcripts of all his own files of sessions, which Bud Hopkins didn't do. Bud Hopkins didn't do transcripts, but David Jacobs paid a secretary, a clerk, to do transcripts of all his audio tapes of hypnosis sessions. All of that is in Philadelphia American Philosophical Society.
It's
Okay.
great.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, Irena, what I wanted to tell you about a lecture by Hynek in 1970. Before talking about Maria Blair, in a minute, I'll let you talk about Maria Blair because actually that's the main issue where we want to listen to you for the French listeners who don't know the Pascagoula case, but you have carried out an investigation together with Philip Mantle, and especially with the new witnesses, especially Maria Blair and many others. We won't have time to talk about most of them, but we'll listen to you about her and her husband. But before that, a lecture by Hynek in 1976 in Manitoba, Canada. Have you heard about that, Irena? That was found by recently by Chris Rutkowski, Canadian investigator, and it was sent to Philip Mantle. Do you know this lecture by Hynek in 1976?
I don't have a copy of it. I probably have it in my notes.
Aha, okay. Okay. So Alan Hynek was in Pascagoula 2 days after the event on Saturday 13th, 1973. Hynek's presence helped make the event immediately publicized across the country. We know that Hynek said that after interviewing, after doing the hypnosis sessions with James Harder, who had come from California, from Berkeley University, they said both that the man had lived something traumatic. They were not lying, but they didn't know exactly what they had lived, but they were sure that they had gone something hard. put up with. Our quote from the recording of Hynek lecture in Manitoba, 6th of February 1976, at the University of Manitoba. When I got there, down there with Dr. Harder, who did the hypnosis, I guess I should say, Dr. Harder put Charlie under hypnosis, regressed him back to his 5th birthday party. Charlie was able to tell us what presents he got on his 5th birthday. But when Dr. Harder tried to regress Charlie to just 2 days earlier, to the time of the experience, perspiration broke out on his forehead. He got very tense and he just didn't want to relive that experience. What do you say about that, Irena?
I can see why. I mean, he was paralyzed. He was abducted. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't know if he was going to live or die or anything else.
Yeah. It was so hard, yes. At the same time, in 1973, when they tried to hypnotize them, both of them, I think Calvin Parker, they couldn't hypnotize. It was so under shock, they didn't manage to put him under hypnosis. And so a few years afterwards, that's what he explained, Mr. Alan Hynek. So he goes on. Sheriff Diamond had left the tape recorder going when Charlie and Calvin Parker were in the room at the police department, thinking they were alone. From the conversation they had between each other, I could detect no sign of collusion or that it was a fake in any way. I came to the conclusion this abduction case in Pascagoula with the 2 fishermen that were taken aboard and given an examination, that had been what was to them a real experience. They were not lying. Whether it was real experience, some nuts and bolts, who do we know? How do we know? That's the Alan Hynek words. So he asserts that they had an experience, but he does not state that they were abducted really at the time.
Well, there's no way to prove that.
Yeah.
But the people were sincere. But since then, we found so many witnesses that we can say that something was there that other people saw.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it means that Alan Hynek was very honest to say that he had no evidence, no proof that they had been abducted, but he stated that they had lived something hard.
No, they were very sincere.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go to the new witnesses, and of course, Jerry and Maria Blair. Let me see which picture I have there. Okay, here we have Jerry and Maria Blair by the time of the event. A word by Calvin Parker. Charlie Hickson passed away in 2011. After a recent appearance on TV by Calvin Parker on Fox 10 News, 2 witnesses have come forward to recount what they saw that night. Irena SCOTT interviewed Maria and Vernon Jerry Blair, first on January 23rd and secondly on January 26, 2019. Can you recall that, Irena?
Yes. Parker was on YouTube, and a woman saw him and sent a note in that said, yes, my parents saw the abduction. And so Philip found out the name of her parents and gave her to me. And I just thought it was like a normal interview. So I interviewed him. And at that first interview, he was a skeptic, and he just said, I heard a splash. And then she said that they were sitting on, they were on a pier on the other side of the river. And there was a ship out there, and they were waiting for his supervisor to come because he and his supervisor are going to go out and supply some rigs or something. And they saw commotion on the other side, but they didn't know what it was until the next morning, and they heard about the abduction. But she said that while they were sitting there waiting, that he went to sleep, and she saw this, what she thought was an airplane. They were just flying around doing nothing, and she couldn't understand what it was doing, and she thought it was searching for something, but she didn't understand. Then she said that it was about 9 o'clock, and she said that he decided to put his clothes in the ship. And so they were walking down the pier, and he was ahead of her. And as she was walking along, this thing flopped up in front of her, and it looked like a person. And then it flopped back down, and it never came back up for air, and she was terrified. She went down to the ship. Then 12 o'clock, she came back and was terrified. And this rang bells in me for two things. For one thing, that thing that flopped up on the, she was just terrified of it. And the other thing, there seemed to be missing time with the 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock. Exactly. And so I kept in contact with her for a couple of years. And then I think the first note her daughter said was, but they weren't abducted, weren't. But anyway, later, about 2 years later, her husband, who was a skeptic, became very ill. And before he went on a ventilator, he told her that they had been abducted. So he wasn't really a skeptic. He was behaving like a skeptic. And he described it to her, and then it started coming back to her. And there was hypnosis session with her and that sort of thing. But it was shocking for a number of reasons. One is the abduction, and two is her own husband apparently had been in contact with the aliens or whatever they were beforehand, before that happened, and he not told anybody about anything, and then finally told her she was abducted. But it was a very, very, very unusual thing, because I think it's the first time it's been reported of two abductions at the same time and place, possibly by the same things.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for this clear summary. Irena, all these things are very impressive. Two groups of people have been abducted at the same time, at the same place. That's very unusual. There are very few cases that show such a thing. Betty and Barney Hill, wife and husband, were abducted together. But here we have two friends, two colleagues working, two ship workers, two shipyard workers. But at the same time, on the other bank of the river, there is a couple, a man and his wife, waiting for a ship. Because the man was working on the ship, he was waiting for it. And so that is four people who have been abducted at the same place on the two banks of the river, more or less at the same time. And we found that the couple, thanks to the investigation that was carried out by Philip Mantle from 2017, when he suggested to Calvin Parker to write his own account. And Calvin Parker had this intention at this time because he was encouraged by his wife. So thanks to this investigation started by Philip Mantle, these two books by Calvin Parker, many witnesses, and then Irena SCOTT got involved to go on helping Philip Mantle in this investigation. So many other witnesses came forward, and the major ones surely are Maria Blair and her husband, Vernon Jerry Blair. That's right, Irena?
Yeah, actually, at the time it happened, a number of people had called the police department, like about 50 people, and said they saw something. That's really real time, because they didn't know anything. They didn't know what was going on. And they called because something was there. And then we found about 50 more.
Oh, you found
So there were a lot of people that saw something odd.
Okay, maybe we will ask you about one or two witnesses. I'm going to read some of words by Maria Blair, Vernon Blair, and their daughter, if you allow, Irena. In the second interview with Maria Blair, more details come up. Here she says, she seemed disturbed about the thing that came up out of the water and said it looked like a man. She discussed this several times. When she saw it, the man came out of the water right beside her location on the pier. She thought he would have had to come up again for air, but said the water just rippled out and left. And as you reminded Irena, Jerry Blair and Maria talk about a man. They saw the creature as a human being. That's very striking as well. Now, Maria Blair's daughter said her parents were aboard. Okay, the car. We don't have time to talk about the car, the Pontiac, very important. But now, an email from Blair's eldest daughter, Angela Maria Blair, sent to Philip Mantle on January 29th on 2019, right? I am my mother's oldest daughter. I have heard this story several times over the years. My mother goes into detail about the night of the 11th of October 1973, Pascagoula, Mississippi. I can verify that I have been told this story over the years. My mother has always wondered what happened to those guys and if they were still in the area. She has only told my grandparents, who have passed, myself, my sister, and my ex father in law, this story because she was always scared they would come back for her. It means Maria was scared 20 or 30 years afterwards. Is that what you think? What you understand too, Irena?
Well, at that time, she didn't. You see, with abductions, a lot of times people's memory is deleted, and it'll happen, but then they don't remember it. And maybe in the future they're hypnotized or something reminds them they remember it. But like at that time, she didn't know they'd been abducted. But I paid attention to it because there was a missing time, and she had this terrible fear of this thing that flopped up in front of her, which wasn't quite normal. And I wondered if there was something more locked back in her brain.
Yeah, thank you, Irena. You reminded I wanted to ask you about that precisely, the missing time, because it has not been stressed out much. I find you wrote it in the book and articles, but there are not enough comments about that. Obviously, if they went to the boat by 9:30, and come back to the car alone because her husband was supposedly left into the boat at midnight, it is like more than 2 hours of missing time.
Yeah, and she didn't say anything about what happened to him. She said she went to the boat, and at 12 o'clock at night she came back. She didn't say anything about anything that was going on between, in that time. And you'd think, where she had several things happen, that something would be going on, that she might discuss it with her husband or something.
And she was scared in any way when she came back to
Yeah.
her car.
Oh, yeah, she ran.
Yeah, and her daughter go on writing. My mom has seen one of the creature, one drop into the water, heading their ways, and was under the pier. She ran and got back in the car and took off, scared to death. So again, Mrs. Blair again. No, it was not a man. It looked like a person, and it came up to the top of the water right beside me on the pier. It was grey looking, like the skin diver's suit, but was trans looking. That is when I told my husband that somebody is out there. I had no idea until the next day about the abduction of Parker Hickson. It was until the next day that I realized that it was not a person, it was alien. That is why at times I will just cry, knowing that it is what it was. So a trauma, a heavy trauma for this woman, Maria Blair.
And when that happens to people, they may have a whole lot of feeling coming back, but they don't remember what happened.
Yeah, because there is the memories are being erased one way or another. Temporary erased. It can be woken up through hypnosis. Now, the first meeting between Calvin and the Blair. Calvin Parker and Vernon Jerry Blair and Mrs. Maria Blair met for the first time on March 6, 2019. They were interviewed by the local TV station WLOX, LOX, account by Vernon Blair on September 11th, 2019. He was at hospital to undergo severe surgery. Can you recall that, Irena?
Well, he finally told her that they had been abducted, but he was sick and unfortunately died not too long afterwards. But it was right before he went on a ventilator. And if you're on a ventilator, you have all these things and you can't talk. And so right before they went on the ventilator, they taped it, and they also called Philip and discussed it with him too. So there was a record of him saying that they'd been abducted.
Exactly. That's what he said. He always would say to me, that's Maria Blair saying, he always would say to me not to say anything when all along he had seen it, the UFO and the grey being, and never told me. He was afraid if he did not make it out of the operation, I would never know, so he told me. He said he had seen them, the grey beings, floating the way away from us and to the other side of the river. Then we have a short video. So, as you say, he told the truth to his wife on his deathbed on the hospital. Now a short video of Mr. Blair on Maria Blair's cell phone. Here's a recording. I lied all them years saying I didn't see what my wife saw, but I saw exactly what she described as an object, a person, a humanoid in the water, that I kept telling her that was a porpoise, but it was not a porpoise. It was a humanoid figure that was in the water, and it made a splashing noise. And I also saw the blue lights when they came down, and the people, whatever, humanoid, leaving us, not coming to us, but leaving us. I don't remember seeing them come to us, but I remember them leaving us, and I saw them go back across the river to their spaceship or whatever it was. Do you have a comment there, Irena?
Yeah, part of his memory was deleted, but not the whole thing.
because Vernon, Jerry says he did not see the humanoids come to them or floating to them, but he remembers seeing them going away from them back to the craft on the other bank. It means there is a missing time there, of course.
Yeah, the very first one was the Hill family, and they didn't remember anything and underwent hypnosis, and this slowly came to them. But that happens in a whole lot of times, and Pascagoula was different because they both were conscious when it happened, knew what happened, and remembered it afterwards. And that was a lot different from a normal abduction.
Yeah. Calvin and Charlison remember from the beginning. It is true, but here we see that there is something missing in Jerry Blair and Maria Blair's account. They saw the humanoid splashing by the pier, but afterwards they don't remember anything. But Jerry remembers seeing the beings going back, floating into the river through to the other bank. So there are a few things missing in the account.
Yeah. I was going to say something I can't remember.
Obviously, something happens. Beings came to them, see them just like they seized Calvin Hickson and Charlison. They brought them to the craft. They practiced whatever examination, and they brought them back, and then they left again through the river. But we only have, in Vernon's recollection, we only have the end of the event.
Except that he had been in contact with him before, and he was acting like a skeptic all that time. But he had contact with the beings before that.
Yeah. So we see only a little part of the complete event.
And that's a scary thing too, because here's this woman that not only gets abducted, but she finds out her husband knew about it all the time. And that'd be just as shocking.
Yeah. He must have been even more scared than his
Yeah.
wife. He wanted to protect her, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Vernon Blair confirmed in a private talk with Philip Mantle what he had said to his wife. Philip Mantle spoke with Mr. Blair via cell phone on September 11, 2019. He confirmed what he had said in the video. He said he had indeed seen the same thing as his wife and more. He saw the humanoid creature moving away across the water to the other side of the river. He also saw the blue light on the UFO and saw it shooting off into the sky. The last pages of the book Hypnosis transcripts, we find more account by Jerry Blair. Jerry remembered more than Maria did at that point on the pier. He said some of the beings were 6 feet tall and gray in color. 2 of them grabbed him, got control of him. He said that he saw them but did not want to see them. One of the beings stood in front of the others, and Jerry thought this one was the leader. The beings floated them into the object. So remembered quite a few things that he had not said before. Okay, we're Irena. So now we'll thank you. What do you say to summarize Maria Blair's and Jerry Blair's experience? You have a word to summarize it or to comment, a last word about it?
Well, it happens to a lot of people and they don't remember anything. And so with Charles and Calvin, it was really good because they were investigated and filmed and everything immediately afterwards with a good investigation. Usually that doesn't happen because, abductions aren't accepted in ufology because usually there's no documentation. If it happens, it's way out in the boondocks, like with the hills, where nobody's around. There's no other witnesses, and often the people don't know it themselves, and so it's hard to investigate. Well, this is a really good example. They were both conscious when it happened. They were conscious afterwards. They remembered it. But Blair's are more like, Maria Blair is more like a normal abduction where you don't remember part of it.
So, have you met Maria several times? How many? I'm
We
supposing.
write to each other. I've never
Right.
been down to Pascagoula.
You have not been to Pascagoula. Okay. What about the hypnosis session with me, the hypnotherapist Crystal Slaughter? Is there something you want to recall precisely about this hypnotic session? Because I know
Well,
I've seen pictures. She was scared in the session. She was screaming
um,
or crying or suffering.
well, she was, when she found out about her husband and things, she was concerned and she thought that the aliens might be interested in her eggs and things like that because of her husband's prior interaction with them. And she thought maybe that's why they were abducted, because maybe they were following her reproductive,
Purpose.
activities and her eggs and all that.
Yeah, I remember that's what she said. Yes, she had this feeling that they were using her ovaries or eggs. Yes, terrible things. The recurrent thematics that um, found that Bud Hopkins found and David Jacobs, like in the 90s, the 80s and 90s, like a long time before ago. Terrible things.
Well, even with the Hill abduction way back, Betty Hill said that they stuck a needle down in her, and like they were taking eggs or something. That was way back, and that they also did something to Barney.
Barney Hill, yes. Okay, thank you, Irena. Do you want to say something, for instance, about Richard Rutledge, another witness? You say that I just found the person in the police department who was Sheriff Diamond's son. Remember that the person, the police officer who were taking the calls.
Yeah, he said that he got around 50 calls that
Yeah,
night from
yeah,
people reporting seeing something odd. So it was hard to
yeah.
report then because people made fun of you and there was no place to report. And in spite of all those obstacles, people still called the police and reported because something was so strange. And they wouldn't have been influenced by the press or anything else because they called when it was happening.
Yeah, his name is Mick Diamond. He was Diamond's son.
Uh huh.
He was a dispatcher agent that night. He said, "I believe I took around 50 calls on the phone, not to mention walks in at the police department, means people who came directly to the police department, and I had to type all this word for word on my report at the end of my shift. And there was a minister that came into the police department also. The minister, I think it may be the this Pastor Sigalas, Emmanuel Sigalas, maybe. We I will ask you a few questions about. Richard Rutledge was interviewed on the telephone in July 2019 by Dr. Irena SCOTT. Here he says, testimony of Mr. Richard Rutledge, who was 7 years old in 1973. I was about 7 years old. I was riding my bicycle and noticed green smoke over our chimney. It was getting dark. Sometime not long afterward, this thing appeared, and I was looking up at the bottom of it. It was right above the house. It was round and glowing white with light blue colored specks on it. He was looking at the bottom of the object. After a while, it disappeared right in front of my eyes. The object was white, somewhat like the moon appears, with specks in it. The whole object was lit up. He said he thought it was about the size of the house in diameter and quite low. He thought he could have thrown a rock and hit it. Ask him for a rough comparison of his sightings to the time when Parker and Hickson were abducted. I think what was happening, what we saw was one time right before Parker sighting happened, and there may be the other two times thereafter. He and his father thought some of the neighbors also saw the object. One of the times it appeared, three teenage girls came to the house and stayed. They were scared to death. They were terrified and rang the doorbell like crazy. They were too scared to go home. So this is part of the 1973 UFO wave, Irena. That's what we have to understand.
A whole lot of people saw something that same time. And what impressed me is that my mother seemed sort of weird when she called me at the same time as the abduction. We didn't know anything about that then, but it seemed like a lot of people in
Yeah.
Pascagoula had something weird happen to them or had a
Yeah.
really different sighting that was so strange that they, you know, were upset
Yes.
about it.
Yes, I would like to listen to you about another witness, but here more precisely, you write in your article, you wrote a long article about the circumstances of the Pascagoula incident, and you recall that Pascagoula was location of one of the most sensitive shipbuilding for the Navy, for the U.S. Navy, and there were also nuclear facilities.
Well,
Um,
that's something I just found out recently, and that's what my new book is about. That all this time we just thought it was a backwaters, two men out fishing and all that, and nothing, you know, else, just a rural type thing. Well, then I found out, I realized a couple of years ago, and I wrote the book about that. No, this was near a very top military installation, and they used to hide atomic sites so that people didn't know they were there back then. But the Huntington Ingalls, which they were beside when it happened, was a shipbuilding site where not only were they building ships, it was an atomic site, a nuclear site, because the ships had nuclear propulsion. And besides that, the submarines not only were propelled by nuclear reactors, but at that time they also had missiles on them that were nuclear tipped too. So this is similar to those events where people in charge of missiles said, UFOs came around and turned off the missiles and things. Well, here, this was very comparable to anything like that because it was the top shipbuilding site of the country.
Yes. Do you know Robert Salas, Irena?
Yeah, he helped me write the book.
Okay. I was fortunate enough, let's say, to meet personally Mr. Robert Salas, ex-Captain Robert Salas. I met him in Italy in 2024.
Well, he was in the control area of the missile site.
Yeah, it was in Montana. It was
yeah.
Malmstrom,
Yeah.
right? And there were Minot Air Force Base. There were several sites. It was the protection of the United States on the northern border with Canada against the USSR.
Yeah, because you sort of think of going to Russia as going around, but actually the shortest distance is right over the North Pole. And he was in the control center and heard that this object was up above him, and then the missiles cut out. And this seems very, very important because you can destroy the world with these missiles and everything. They were nuclear missiles. And he's been working intensively ever since to draw attention to this, that there's something important going on if UFOs are missile sites and cause our missiles to not work.
Yeah, I think it's very important. The idea you put, the light you shed on these things now, today, Irena, looking at the Pascagoula incident, in the same way we have to understand the alien watch over nuclear facilities. There's the same, because the incident with Captain Robert Salas, Minot Air Force Base Malmstrom, occurred in 1975 or in 76, if I remember.
And he's been talking about it and trying to get attention ever since because the government should be real interested in that. I mean, if a Russian was any place near that, they'd have all kinds of security out. Just, if a Russian was there, well, here's a UFO hovering above and the missiles cut out. The government takes no interest at all. And nobody can understand that. And I was saying that Pascagoula is pretty much like that too. I mean, instead of just being a rural, good old boy thing, it's a nuclear sighting. And also ships from that company in Pascagoula who was involved and brought about the TikTok and the New York Times article that resulted in disclosure and everything else. It was a top intelligence gathering site too. And so this was a really high important military and government and nuclear site. It wasn't just two good old boys out fishing.
Good, good. We are really eager to listen, to read your articles or chapters together with Robert Salas. It sounds very, very interesting. Irina, thank you and congratulations for this work. Again, it's true, 1973, just before 1975. I mean, the aliens were watching arguably the sensitive facilities, the nuclear facilities, everywhere in the United States, probably in Russia as well. Okay, great. I met Robert Salas at the CUN Congresso Ufologico Nazionale Symposium, the organization managed by Roberto Pinotti in Italy. It is an annual UFO symposium. Robert Salas was there in 2024, and I went there for the first time. Yeah.
Well, he's real concerned about the whole thing.
Yeah,
And
he is. And his wife too. And I talked to his wife, who is a Christian woman, lady, and she passed away recently.
yeah,
Yeah. I hope. And he offered me, he asked me if I wanted to translate his book. I said I would like to, but I have to go through his publisher. You know, the publisher now are very difficult in the United States. They are greedy. They think in France it's difficult to sell foreign authors because people don't know much about foreign. They know little. You see, even Robert Salas, some people know him, but the situation is difficult here, Irena, as I told you in mail. Okay, thank you for this new light upon Pascagoula and the whole alien issue. Emmanuel Sigalas, we are going to close with the spiritual aspect that even Charles Hickson addresses at some point. It's something that's not very commented upon, and I find it interesting one way or another. But now, Emmanuel Sigalas, do you want to say a word about him? Pastor Sigalas.
oh, I guess they had a good sighting. What was interesting was that there was a woman in the back seat that was with him, and just he didn't mention too much about her except she was disturbed about it. But then Philip found her and I interviewed her, and she remembered it real well, all the details and everything. So there were two of him and the other person, but also she was there too and remembered the thing.
Yeah. I remember they were driving. Pastor Sigalas was with another man, and they were driving to a session, or a prayer session for people who are suffering from alcoholism. They were in a car. There were two men, a pastor and another man who was working for people going out of jail, to a supportive group. And this girl was from a church, and they were going for a prayer meeting with these people. It was in the north, and they were by Gautier, I think, and they saw this craft hovering. And they gave the account. It was at the same time. It was like 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. Gautier, just north of it where Charles Hickson was living. It was just north, or they were like a few miles north of Pascagoula when they saw it. But what I found interesting, as I'm sure you remember, on this picture, Irena, you see Pastor Emmanuel Sigalas with a person who is Stefanos Panagiotakis. Have you heard about him?
He went to visit him?
Yeah, Stefanos Panagiotakis was a Greek worker, was a radio technician on a commercial ship, and their ship had gone from Greece, Athens, to Barcelona, and to Barcelona they were heading to Brazil, I think, the Caribbean and to Brazil, but they had an issue with their ship, and they had to get repaired, and they went to Pascagoula, United States. and they had to stay there for 1 week to repair the ship. And it happened that Stefanos Panagiotakis was part of a UFO group in Greece, and he knew that happened in July 1981, and he knew the PASCAGOULA case since 1973, was very interested in the case, and he found himself in Pascagoula. He was so shocked that he decided to go and do an investigation by himself on the same week, and he did, and he found some witnesses. That's amazing, and he found this Pastor Emmanuel Sigalas through someone else. And Sigalas was of a Greek family originally. That's amazing. I'm going to read you interview with Emmanuel Sigalas on July 17th, 1981. Excuse me, sir, do you know Mr. Emmanuel Sigalas? Because Stefanos found his home through the police department. Asked him. He replied, I am this man, son. Who are you? I told him who I was, what I wanted from him. Hello, sir. I'm Stefanos Panagiotakis from Athens, Greece. I came here on a cargo ship where I'm working as a radio officer, but I am also a UFO researcher and investigator for a group named Sirius. And a reporter, Mr. Don Brodus of the Mississippi Press told me that his late cousin Raymond and you were both witnesses in that case, and that's why I came to see you, and ask you a few questions. Pastor Sigalas replied, I want you to feel like you are at home. You know, I was born in America, but my parents were from the Greek island of Kefalonia. Amazing. Mr. Brodus told me that the day when an alien craft landed near Pascagoula shipyard, abducted two local fishermen, Mr. Hickson and Mr. Parker, you are going with his cousin. Sigalas, yes, that was Raymond, who passed away last month. He was a police officer with special duties, such as a court advisor and guarantor for good behavior of people who were about to be released from jail. He was a good man. Many times he was preaching in my church. We were brothers in Christ, as they used to say. On that particular day in 1973, October 11th, we drove to a place where Raymond used to visit every Thursday for preaching to people who cannot control their habit for too much alcohol. So we went on our way, having with us a young girl. Okay, that's the story. And then, as you know, Irena, Philip Mantle found the girl. He looked for the church on the website, and he found the girl. It was a long investigation. He was lucky, efficient enough, let us say, to find her, this girl. And she gave her account to Philip Mantle. After the event, Sigalas and Brodus gave their account on the phone to Alan Hynek, who had traveled to Mississippi. Now, the spiritual aspect, Irena, I will ask you to say what you think, if you think anything about this conversation between Stefan Panagiotakis and Pastor Sigalas. Sigalas, well, I speak to you honestly. If I hadn't seen this craft in the sky, I would never have paid any attention to them and to their story. But it was a fact that what we saw, this strange object, while driving in our car, and of course, they saw the same thing a little later. A little later, right in front of their eyes. That's why I say, Sigalas, go on. That's why I say this is a real story. Everybody with their experiences helped corroborate the story. So what happened to Hickson and Parker cannot be denied. What the craft was and who the creatures were remains unknown. Though then Panagiotakis asked him more precise questions about religion, let us say. My opinion, Mr. Sigalas, is that all these appearances on our planet are not signs of God. We have to deal with people from other more advanced civilization, but we are not as primitive as our ancestors to consider them as gods. Sigalas, I want to tell you this. You are absolutely right about our space brothers, but they are also created by God. And when He wants to tell us, look not to for them, but they will be revealed to us formally. And this would be absolutely proof of a common Father, Creator of all. What do you say about that, Irena?
Well, what I have to say is, right here on Earth, there's all kinds of people, and there's all kinds of religions, and um, there, other entities have religion. Well, uh, they may. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, the UAP seems supernatural, and so does religion, but it's not necessarily the same thing. Um, and you shouldn't see, something that's more advanced as God. I mean, why would we be the only things in the universe that are?
Exactly. That's what Pastor Sigela said. I was glad to read him because usually we are accustomed to listen to people or clergymen saying things are all there, either from the good or bad, from God or from the evil. But here is not what he says. He says that they are creatures by the same God who lives in other places. I was glad to read him. As simple as that. Life is in other places. If there is a God, obviously, people who believe in God may believe that creature or creature of God in other places. That's an interesting point to consider. He says, Sigaras, I consider love and peace of the most importance. We Greeks have the most appropriate word for this, Philadelphia. When there is when there is this one, the rest are details. Philadelphia, old world, philosophical word. I think I wanted to check, but I forgot to check what Philadelphia means exactly. I think it's the love for knowledge. I think, yeah, I think I'm not sure. Philadelphia, the town of Philadelphia. Remember, we're talking about Philadelphia and David Jacobs a while ago. Okay. There are so many we witnesses, but we are short already. We have talked a long time. Charles Sons was hypnotized by Bud Hopkins too, two times in 1985 and 1989. Um, He said the beings had legs, but did not use them. They were about 5 feet tall, had bullet-shaped heads with necks. Well, we have read of that already. Do you know about Antonio Huneeus, Irena?
Yeah, I just
Antonio.
read that thing that you mentioned.
Yeah, it was an article written September 16, 2011, published with permission of Open Minds TV and Alejandro Rojas. And Uneus referred the interrogation at Kisler Air Force Base. Maybe we will close with that, Irena. What do you have to say about the interrogation at the Kisler Air Force Base?
Well, they took him in and had an interrogation, and by some important people like colonels and things like that, and directors and things. And in question, I mean, Charles and Calvin.
Yeah,
And they had a transcript of the whole thing, which is
yeah,
fantastic. All the questions they asked him and all the answers and everything else was just amazing.
yeah. But do you remember that originally the Air Force denied having carried out any interrogation of the people? Do you remember that? They denied in the 80s. They got mail from the NICAP, and we have the answers. They said they never had any interrogation with them, and the file was found later.
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's. I think it was because it was a nuclear site, and they were trying to hide some of that.
Yeah, as what you were explaining before, they was probably interested in this event because maybe they knew that the aliens, ETs, were watching their facilities, or they were concerned about being watched by ETs. What do you think?
Yeah, because they were trying to hide that. There was, I won't bring it up, but there was another um, USO, unidentified submerged object sighting, and they were trying to cover that up too on account of the
Oh
nuclear
yeah,
site.
yes. You were mentioning that, and Uneus was mentioning too that too. Uneus write that the document of the Kisler Air Force is of particular interest for two reasons. One, it was done in late 1973, almost 3 years after Project Blue Book was closed, and the US Air Force was officially out of the UFO business. So it means that actually they were still involved because they carried out this interrogation, so they were lying about having closed Project Blue Book. And secondly, it seems to have been the only known government document showing an official investigation of a UFO abduction case. Okay, and and he mentioned too the USO event. I studied that in the first book by Calvin Parker and Philip Mantle. Yes. What do you say in a few words, Irena? Because the USO, the transmedian object are being very much mentioned about since David Fravor, all the disclosure from the 2000 Nimitz encounter. And now we understand that most UFOs are both UFO and USOs because they jumped into the water with no problem and then jump out of water with no difficulty either. So what do you have to say about what happened in 1973? Calvin Parker aircraft, the man crossing the bank, swimming. Then the USO in the bay were seen by uh, mm, people who
Nine
were
people,
fishing,
yeah.
fishermen, 9 fishermen, yes, and the Coast Guard who that came from Alabama, I think, to investigate Florida or Alabama. What do you want to say a word about this USO event?
Well, I guess what I want to say uh, is that today most of our nuclear forces are in submarines. I mean, if we think of nuclear sources as being like a nuclear plant like Hanover or a missile base, but actually they're in submarines. And the UAP seem to be interested way back in nuclear things in submarines. And that's a real important part of our nuclear force now. Nobody knows it.
I understand. You mean the ETs are watching nuclear weapons under the sea level with American submarines, Russian, Chinese, French submarines. That's a big issue. That's what you are saying.
And that's just as important as like the Bob Salas thing over the missile site. Well, this is a missile site too, an
Yeah,
atomic site and everything else. And it's where most of the atomic weapons are now.
yeah. Okay, so I think we have given a lot for people to think about, Irena. Thank you. Thank you very much for the time you gave to me and to the French people who want to know more and to think about the PASCAGOULA case and many more issues, just as you just said, just right now, with nuclear threat. Sound okay. So I'm going to show the cover of the books, just cover of the books. Are you in contact with Maria Blair recently?
You what?
Are you in contact with Maria Blair?
No.
Have you talked to her or recently?
Yeah, we email and, you know,
Is she all right? If
I
you
think
can
so.
Here is Philip Mantle, your friend and colleague. Really, really thank you to him for all his work. He has been carried out, his investigation.
He's amazing.
Yeah, amazing, really. And so sorry that he had a health issue. We are all very much worried. Now he seems to be back, but when I write to him, always ask him to be very careful, to relax, not to overwork.
Which he would do.
Yeah, that will do. So here, Colin Parker with Donald Smith at a UFO conference. Do you know, Irena, that Calvin Parker met with Major J.C. Marshall? Do you know that?
With
Did
who?
you know? Calvin Parker, when he was young, he left Pascagoula. He left the area Lowell, where he was living, north of Pascagoula, and he went to work to Louisiana to run away from the press, from the media. He left to Louisiana. He worked there in the shipbuilding again, and it was in 1981 when I saw the picture a while ago. Remember when he was a young man? It was in 1981, 82, and then he was introduced by a young girl to a man who had something to say because he recognized Calvin to be the witness of the Pascagoula event. She had seen his picture and she recognized him. And she introduced him to Jesse Marshall. And he met Jesse Marshall once. And Jesse Marshall told him to come back a second time. And he could not. And, he could not see him again. And Jesse Marshall passed away in 1986. But it's amazing. Calvin Parker met with Jesse Marshall, and that's why. And you see, the major world investigator into the Roswell case, who is still not known in France. Irena, can you believe that? I got translated Witness to Roswell in 2024, and I paid the publisher quite a big money, I can tell you. And until now, nobody talks about Donald Smith. We have local stars here in France who write books, who talk on the radio show, and the real world experts, are not known in our country. But we are working, thanks to you and other guests. We'll try to help things change. So thank you, Mr. Donald Smith, for your impressive work since 1988 until the end of the 2010, 2016, 2020. Amazing work, amazing book, and Witness to Roswell, which was not your last book. Plus, here with George Knapp at the same event in Edinburgh, Congress, Edinburgh. Where is Edinburgh? Is it in Montana? Irena, you remember? Because
England.
yes, but I didn't find the state. Yeah, there's Edinburgh, but in which state was it? Montana. I didn't find it. It was a UFO conference in 2019 or 21.
California.
Oh, California. Okay, here the translation.
Nevada. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Nevada.
Okay, people who want, we look at this conference and we find it, of course, on the website on the internet. Here is a book translated and translated. That is the first book I translated through partnership with Philip Mantle. First book I translated was Calvin Parker's first book in October 2019. And you know what, Irena? I wanted to publish that in July and August, and I could not. I didn't manage to get it published. And you know what happened? It got published on October 12th of 1917, the day after the event. And I didn't plan that. If you find Amazon.fr, you will find that it was 12th of October 2019. I said after that, I realized I was being supported by invisible beings to publish on the same anniversary, let's say, of the event, or the day after the day of the event. And then I translated your book, Beyond Reasonable Doubt, by Irena SCOTT, Dr. Irena SCOTT, and Philip Mantle. And I translated the transcripts. I'm very proud of both, to have translated both books, the three books, I mean. And the transcripts is very useful for researcher, I believe, because we have the transcript from 1973, then in the 70s for 80, and Bud Hopkins 85, 89 with Charles Hickson, then Bud Hopkins again in 93. Then we have hypnosis with, of course, with Crystal Slaughter to Maria Blair, and hypnotic session with Kathleen Marden in September 2019. You know, after the UFO Congress, International UFO Congress, Calvin Parker asked Kathleen Marden to carry out an hypnotic session, and she visited him at his home in PASCAGOULA. That's where they did. And the cover is me who designed it, Irena. And Philip liked it so much that he asked me to send the picture. So he took the picture, the settings, and he put the English title. But it's me who designed this cover through this colorized image of the site of the event.
It's good.
Yeah. Yes, my website so thank you. Do you want to say a last word about the PASCAGOULA incident and saying what you are working out now presently, Irena?
Yeah, I think it's a lot more important than it's been presented. It's been presented as very, very important, but I think the nuclear aspect and the government aspect are really important too, and they may have maybe present an explanation on why there were so many other sightings, because with a abduction, they're usually out by themselves with no witnesses. This was loaded with witnesses. And I thought maybe, they were very, very intensively looking at that nuclear site.
Very important issue to think, a key to analyze this alien event, this abduction event, this sightings event, through the idea of the concern of alien culture, alien civilizations. They're concerned about the use of nuclear weapons or nuclear energy.
Well, it's dangerous because they seem to use mind control, and you don't want mind control a nuclear site. You don't want them to turn off missiles, but you don't want them to affect people's minds at a nuclear site either.
Yes, of course. I hope I will be able to get translated Robert Sala's books at some point, if I reach a deal with with the publisher. Do you have a word about the current situation of UAP disclosures, the hearing at the Congress, all of that? A short word because it's so much to say, or maybe not so much.
Well, we're just lucky we're having it now in the United States. Of course, you know that they're releasing UFO film, the government is. But yeah, it's compared to the past, well, it's really coming along. Compared to what you want, it's not coming along. But compared to the past, where they said no UFOs existed, it's doing a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, that's something. That's something already. Yes, I looked through. I downloaded it, many of these files, and I looked at some of them. We don't have a real disclosure yet, but hopefully, as you say, hopefully it will happen at some point. Um, okay, and when is your book getting released, Irena?
It's been released.
Oh,
It was published last year.
what is the name again?
Uh, just a minute.
Because
Here it is.
I
Can
didn't
you
show
see
the
it?
picture. Oh, but I saw the picture. Yeah, yeah, here, yes.
Yeah,
I saw
that's
the picture a while ago. Yes, I saw the picture, Irena. I forgot to comment a bit. What is the title? Pascagoula?
Pascagoula, the ultimate close encounter, best documented nuclear government and mind control dimensions.
Oh yes. Anyway, I saw the cover of the book in the middle of the presentation a while ago. So people will look at it there, and I will put it in the description of the video. So thank you, Irena. Thank you again for this time. Thank you
Well,
very
thank
much.
you. Thank
I'm
you very
very
much.
I'm very proud, Irena. And it is the first time we talked to each other. Plus, so have a good afternoon. Then and I'll talk to you later. I'll tell you when it's out. Okay.
Okay, and you're doing a lot of really valuable work, and it's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irena. Talk to you later. Then goodbye.
Okay.